for hard labor, odd hours, low pay, and a cool helmet. KFVS-TV reports that the Scott County Rural Fire Protection District posted the job description outside its stations on signs. Chief Jeremy Perrian says most advertisements are kind of boring. He says that's why they wanted to add some humor to it and try to catch people's attention. The fire district posted a picture of the Help Wanted message on its Facebook page this week. Perrian says they're short about 15 firefighters and rarely have a full staff.
With your Mayo Clinic Radio Health Minute, I'm Jeff Olson. If bath time is a tough time at your house, you're not alone.
It is not uncommon for there to be a huge debate and discussion about who should bathe, how often, and with what and why.
Mayo Clinic dermatologist Dr. Dawn Davis is about to settle this sudsy debate. So kids, listen up.
For young infants and children between the ages of 6 to 12, it's best to wash or take a bath approximately 2 to 3 days a week.
Dr. Davis says once they hit puberty, teens should have a shower or bath every day, or at minimum every other day.
There are caveats to this. At any time in life when you develop excessive sweat or become very dirty, then you should bathe.
And here's something that may surprise you.
You will now be placed into conference.
Is someone else on the bridge?
Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in about 5 minutes.
Hi, Dorothy. It's Jolena.
Hi, Jolena. How are you doing?
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Jolena, are you moved into WebEx yet?
Dorothy, it's not giving me the option to join yet.
Okay.
Do I need to start it?
Good morning, everyone. We'll get started here in just a few moments. I'm going to go ahead and check to see who we have as far as committee members participating in today's call. Jolena, I heard you. Christian? JR?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Great, thank you. Eddie? Sheriff Hyatt?
I'm here.
Joe Lurch?
Present.
Can everybody see the presentation okay?
Yes.
It's not, this is Joe Lurch, it's not coming up from option for me to join. I've refreshed the page.
And that's what it's saying for mine.
Joe, Sheriff Hyatt, why don't you try joining from the link that was provided on the Funding Committee webpage?
Okay.
I went to the WebEx link. I didn't know about a Funding Committee webpage link. I don't know if I've got that somewhere in an email.
That was sent out in a previous email, but if you go to the ISC website and you go on the left-hand side to PSC, you'll see Funding Committee as an option in the drop-down menu.
On the website where it says presentation under the 25th, it's not where you can click on it.
Right.
The other two. Okay.
Right, but there's a WebEx link there as well.
Yes. Okay, I see it.
Okay. Is anyone else having difficulty accessing WebEx?
But Dorothy, I initially had trouble, but I closed out and then came back in and went back through using the web link and it worked, or the WebEx and it worked.
All right, I'm in now. Thanks.
Okay, great. Sheriff Hyatt?
It's working on it now. I had to open the app and also, but you can go ahead. Mine's working on pulling it up now.
Okay, great. Christian, have you joined us? I know Terry Hall will not be able to join us this morning. He had a conflict. So, Jolena, besides you, we have JR, we have Sheriff Hyatt, we have Joe Lurch. Let me try Eddie Reyes. Are you on the bridge? Jolena, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Yes, Dorothy, I think let's go ahead and get started.
They may join while the call is in progress. Well, good morning, everyone. Before we go ahead and get started, I did want to provide a couple of quick updates. We are still waiting on an industry representative, and I'm going to be updating the Funding Committee webpage, so it includes all of our committee representatives right now. the VML and VACO representatives are not included, but we'll make sure that that happens this week. Also, we do, as far as each of the meetings, we go ahead and post the minutes. The minutes were posted for our meeting on the 11th, but I did not send out a hard score and send out the minutes as an attachment to the group, so you probably have not had an opportunity to review those. So we'll delay discussion and voting on that document until our next call. Jolena, I'm just going to move on to our first agenda item, and that item is to discuss the framing questions.
Okay, Dorothy. So, Dorothy, did you want to cover these? Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you want to run through them, that would be great. I separated the questions so that we could discuss each question on a separate slide and not make it a knife chart.
Okay. So Dorothy and I got together and we reworded this one slightly to as you're reading, is the projected growth rate of wireless 911 revenue sufficient to keep pace with estimated NG9-1-1 recurring cost? If not, what are possible methods for increasing revenue? So are you all more satisfied with the way that question is worded, and is that broader that to begin to collect information on possibilities to increase that revenue?
This is Joe Lurch. I would agree.
Okay. So JR, Sheriff, any other changes you think we need to make to that one, or would you like to move on to the next one?
No, that one's fine.
Okay,
Yep,
Dorothy, if you want
to. I agree as well.
Okay, thank you. So then the second one, we reworded to, do Virginia PSAPs believe the current distribution percentages for the wireless E911 fund are optimal to support PSAP operations and discretionary funding, which of course is the PSAP Grant Program. And this is where we will collect information whether agencies would rather have more operational funding or more discretionary funding, or if they think the balance is about right. Are you satisfied with the way this one's worded?
Yeah, this is JR, Jolene. I like the way that one is worded as well. I think that's a good question.
Yeah, and this is Sheriff Hyatt. I do too.
Hey, Jolena.
Yes.
Hey, it's Melissa Parsons. Sorry about the background noise. I'm in my car and this wonderful Bluetooth is not the best. But I do have a question about that. Are you talking about the distribution 60-40? Or are you talking about just the operations? Or are you talking about both? Like the code now, 60-40 split, I think it is. I think. Dorothy, you can remind me if I'm wrong.
I think it's both. I think it's broad enough that we can ask both to validate, is the 60-40 split correct? And then is the current methodology the correct methodology, which of course is population and call volume.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So does the other committee members think that the question's broad enough to encompass both of those questions?
I think so. This is Sheriff Hyatt.
Okay. So, Dorothy, when we get to the survey questions, we'll make certain that we have a question related to the methodology as well as the distribution percentages. And maybe we should make a minor change to add distribution percentages and methodology.
Okay. I'll take a note for that.
Okay. So I think we can move to the next question, Dorothy. How can PSAPs be incentivized to pursue shared and hosted services projects?
Yeah, this is J.R. Jolena. I really like that question, following up on our call earlier today.
Yes, and as background for that, several of us are looking for ways to reduce cost, and we were hoping that with the EZNet, we could do some of the shared equipment projects. But Dorothy will be reaching out to you and Steve because we really need a little bit more engagement from AT&T on that. As some of the centers make their decisions.
Hey, Jolena.
Yes, Melissa?
Sorry. Do you want to add the word regional in there, shared services and regional projects, just in case it's not actually if you're talking about PEP grants, things of that nature, or any other project, do you want to add the word regional, or you're good with that?
I don't think in this case we specifically need regional. I think the shared means one or more. So I think it kind of encompasses the regional.
Okay.
But does others have a different opinion on that? Okay. So Dorothy, hearing none, I think we can move to the fourth and final question. And the last framing question, is there a desire to consolidate physical or technological among Virginia PSAPs, but personnel are unsure of how to proceed or have insufficient resources to proceed?
And this is Sheriff Hyatt, and I think that's an important one because we see our different, like Board of Supervisors and all that are looking to save money in different areas, and that has come up in different things. So I think that's an important one. I think that sounds right.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Jolena, this is JR. I agree with the Sheriff there. I think it's worded well, and definitely I think there's a lot of PSAPs out there that could benefit from doing some shared physical or technological consolidations, but just don't know how to proceed.
Or don't have the resources with all of their hats to proceed. Okay. So that is the 4 questions that we reworded. Do you think this covers the scope of what we want to accomplish with the sustainable funding? And are we happy to proceed with finalizing the charter?
Yes, ma'am. This is JR. I agree with everything, and I think it's worded well, and thank you all for your work on that.
And this Sheriff Hyde, I think so too. It looks well worded to me as well.
Okay. then do we want to go ahead? Do we have Dorothy, I assume we need a motion and a second?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so does someone want to make a motion to adopt the charter as written with the one modification to add the one word that we agreed on?
So moved.
Yep, so Joe, and I'll second this is JR.
Great. And all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Same motion. Okay, so I think we now have a charter.
And Jolena, I'll make that minor adjustment to the first question, and then we'll post the final version to the funding committee website, and we'll put that up above the where we post the meetings and all the related material. We'll put it right under the committee name, so that'll be a final document.
Okay, thank you, Dorothy. So, Dorothy, if you want to move to the next item. And Dorothy, I don't remember where we finalized on this. Are we going to give the draft charter today? Did we send that out for discussion?
We sent out the draft charter. We also sent out what I was terming the research survey to support the framing question. So I can switch over to that now, and we can walk through that document. But everybody should have received that a couple of days ago.
Great. And I think we'd also talked about possibly running it through the RAC as well to see if they had additional questions that they wanted to add to it. So let's go ahead and switch over to the research survey and get everyone's input on the questions. And then I would like to request that we also have the RAC committee look at it to see if they have additional information they believe they may want to collect as well. So for the first framing question around 911 revenue, and Dorothy and my discussions, we came up with two basic questions, and I'll let you read those and see if you think that captures the locality's willingness to support and desire for increased funding. So we had two basic questions there. Although, Dorothy, I think we may have lost one because this has got the localities piece. But we still are looking at the tax proposal. Do we need to capture any sentiments around that?
We certainly can, and my apologies if something got cut and didn't get pasted back in the document. But rather than trying to do the edits on this document here, I'll just take a note and send it back out to the group if that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is Joe. I think just maybe as a straw man for that question, it could probably be very specific to say, should the state remove the exemption on prepaid wireless as a source of revenue? Because that's the real nexus, I think, to 911 here. Because I think the other recommendations of the report had to do with removing the exemption on streaming services, and I don't think that has necessarily a connection. I think the other was, and it wasn't, I think, endorsed by the committee that came up with the report, which was actually taking the current communication sales use and tax, which is at 5%, and bringing it up to what the actual sales tax is in Virginia, which is now 5.3%.
And Joe, you referenced the report on the last call. Since then, we've obtained a copy of the report, but have not had an opportunity to do a really deep dive on the document. So we can certainly revise the 911 revenue section based on that further review.
Sounds good. And, maybe another thought here, just though, it says, should localities be able to assess a fee? I wonder whether we want to consider wording it just in more general. Should the state authorize collection of a 911 fee for service? Because I think, and I think I mentioned this in the last call, we don't have an industry rep yet, but the kind of the history, at least on the CSUT, was it used to be every locality did their own kind of fee, and it was all consolidated at the state level. And so, I think there might be, for lack of a better word, just maybe some heartburn with maybe going back with the localities collecting a fee. Not saying that we shouldn't ask the question, but maybe we should word it in such a way that, it's the possibility for the state to collect the fee or the locality to collect the fee.
Yeah, and I think that's the nexus of this question. One is, ideally, given that we've had a 40% increase in cost, in telephony cost for every agency, or almost every agency in Virginia, and that's only the tip of the iceberg for what NG9-1-1 is going to do to our cost. Our costs are going up, but not necessarily at a higher rate than our revenue. So the first question is, it's right now a state collection method. Is the state willing to do a statewide increase? And would localities support that, lobby for that, et cetera? If the state is unwilling to do that, will they untie localities' hands so that localities can do an increase for that revenue? So I think it's a two-part question. Are we going to pursue a statewide effort? If not, then are they willing to change the legislation so that localities can assess a fee? If they did, how many localities would actually go forward and pursue that fee? So I guess the question for the committee members is, do we need to ask, should we as a state be considering a fee increase? Or is that, from a committee standpoint, is that just a recommendation we're going to put in? And then in the survey, just collect from the localities, if they're not going to do it at a state level, and we make a recommendation to change it so localities can, would you be willing to, would your locality actually take advantage of that? So I guess my question is, do we need to ask, does agencies want to increase and feel they need one, or is that a given?
Yeah, this is Joe. I'm trying to think through, so this is, the survey is going to go out to all the PSAP coordinators, is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, so, I think it may be a tough question, I think, for a PSAP coordinator to answer whether localities would support, because if you give the authority, then it would be the local governing bodies that would have to then vote to take advantage of that. So maybe they may not know the answer whether the localities support, but maybe the individual PSAP coordinators could indicate that, yes, we would pursue or, support the local authority or having the state. I guess you kind of lay out the options of ways to increase revenue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm assuming that most PSAP managers will engage their administrative body in answering, the question.
Yeah.
But that may just, and that's one of the reasons that we've included VACO and VML, so that their membership is aware of what's being discussed and debated as well.
Sure, and this will help us. I mean, we have general legislative guidance on, providing the necessary funding for the service at the state level, and then we've also in the past supported modernizing the communication sales and use tax. So whatever product comes out of this committee, we can take to our membership in August when we start to develop our legislative policy, and that'll help inform us. So this will all be good.
So, JR and Sheriff, do you think that we need to add anything in about state-level collections, or do you think that most jurisdictions would say, yes, we need some type of increased revenue? If we can't do it at a state level, then we would like to pursue it locally.
Maybe to say something like that, if an increase isn't made on the state level, then but localities could assess it on that level, would your locality take advantage of it? Saying something in there about the state, because I think that is what's probably going to have to happen, is a recommendation for to be increased with the state. But then, so worded that if that doesn't work out, would your locality be able to would they look at the possibility of doing it?
Yeah, I agree with the Sheriff of Jelena. I think it's a very good question and good point that we need to address. And I think giving the localities the option, if like the Sheriff was saying, if the state did not increase the overall revenue stream there for 911, giving that option back to the localities to be able to assess some type of fee to increase their revenue locally.
Okay. So, Dorothy, I think that probably gives us some information to just make a minor change around that, and then I think, is there any other questions besides those 3 or 4 that the 2 that we're talking about adding around state level collections and then the locality? Is there any other questions you think that we need to be asking localities around the revenue?
Not that I can think of.
I think you covered it pretty well there, Jolene. I think it's good.
Okay. The next section goes around is around the 60-40 split, and whether they think it's a optimal balance, or if they would like to see the percentage of the monthly PSAP distribution increased, or reverse, would they like to see the grant program funding increased? And then to the earlier point, we probably need to just add a question, Dorothy, about do they feel that the current methodology of population and call volume is appropriate, and even allow them to recommend alternative if they do not feel that that's a fair distribution methodology.
Okay.
we discussed getting into more detailed questions, but we felt that it was really up to the grant committee to get into to more specifics about how the grant funding. But we'll defer to the RAC and to the grant committee if they want to add any additional questions in. Anything else you all think that we need to ask specifically around the fund distribution?
This Sheriff Hyde, I can't see anything from and what knowledge I have of it. I can't see anything that needed to be added.
Yeah, same here. This is JR. I think you've covered it there, Jolena.
Okay. Then, Dorothy, if we move to the next section. So the grant funding preference for 911 systems. And Dorothy, I'm going to let you cover this section.
Okay. So when Jolene and I talked last week, we looked at a way of having a continuum where it went from completely locally funded to 100% grant funded. And the systems that were identified are the ones that you see here at the left of the table, the call handling equipment, mapping CAD recorder, and we added other GIS equipment. So the idea would be there's a limited amount of funding based on our current revenue stream and how that revenue stream is divided in terms of a split between operations and grant funding. So what is left right now for localities in terms of grant funding is 40% of the fund. I should say 40% after several items that come off the top are addressed. So what we tried to look at here is right now we have the split with 60% going to localities for operational support based on a predetermined formula, and then 40% of the that residual going to localities in grants. Now, right now, with the exception of the PEP program, the available grant funding is being used exclusively to support NG9-1-1 deployment. But looking towards the future, is that an optimal split? Does it need to be a 50-50 split, or does it need to be more weighted to grant funding as we look towards post-deployment? Or, are we looking at providing all of the funding to localities in grants? So this right here, those 5 options are what we came up with in terms of the likely breakdown. Now, you could certainly have other percentages listed there, but those were the ones that we felt were the most likely. The thoughts on this particular series of or actually it's not really questions, it would be we'll have to provide some instructions on the intent of this section. So it would be for PSAP managers who are completing the survey to identify which of the 5 options for each of the systems listed there that they believe to be the most appropriate.
Yeah, Dorothy, this is JR. I like the question, and I was about to say maybe we might need to provide a little bit of instructions, I guess you'd say, as to what we're asking for there. It might be a little confusing to somebody who's going down through trying to answer these questions. But I like the overall intent of that question, yes.
Are the options appropriate, in your opinion?
Yes, I think in my opinion, the items you've got listed there, call handling, mapping, CAD, recorder, other GIS, is spot on pretty much in priority in my opinion. And then, yes, I think the options that you have there for the splits are appropriate as well, yes.
So I think the only thing that is a little bit confusing is, I mean, everyone would like their 911 call handling equipment to be 100% grant funded. But if you're looking at like the current program, I'm not certain that would be feasible, because if you take a Fairfax, with 50 some positions or 30 to 50 positions, that's quite a bit of funding increase from what we do now. So is that what we're talking about there, Dorothy, or?
It would be in terms of the distribution of the funds. So with the percentages, would we not have a grant program and simply use the funding formulas to distribute on a monthly basis? Whatever comes in with revenue for that month would go directly back out to the localities, and there would be no residual revenue for the grant program. So that's what the 100% locally funded column would mean. 100% grant funded would be the complete opposite. Rather than having funding going out to localities based on the predetermined formula, everything would be available through a competitive grant process. Now, another approach for this section would be to take out 100% locally funded and 100% grant funded, just looking at them and saying, well, these are kind of outliers, and just, drill down into assessing what folks think in terms of an optimal split between operations and discretionary funding. That's another way to approach this section.
Yeah. So I think let's look at this section and the one before, and maybe combine the two and see if, because to a certain extent we're asking a little bit of that above. So maybe if we combine these two sections, it'll be a little bit clearer on how we're asking this particular question.
Okay, I'll take a pass at that and see what I come up with.
Yeah, and I'll give some more thought to it too, because I'm just thinking, some agency may look at that and say, oh yeah, I want 100% of my equipment funded.
Right, and it wouldn't be 100% funded. It would be whatever the grant committee would establish as far as funding limits. I mean, so you would still have a certain amount of money allocated or a threshold for each of those items. It would just be that 100% would refer simply to operation and discretionary funding.
And maybe if we just add that terminology to the grant committee maximum, and that may be sufficient to clarify that.
Okay.
And that may be all that we need there. Okay. So, moving on to the maintenance for grant funded projects. I think it's just important for us as a committee to know if we do change grant funding, whether or not agencies would continue to pay for maintenance on their equipment. I just think that that's important in decision-making process because, of course, it's for a 911 center, even though it's a local decision, I think the standard that the state would like everyone to maintain at is that most of the equipment would stay on a maintenance contract. So it would just be interesting if they did not have grant funding, how many of them would drop the maintenance. And that was the only reason that we added that in. Committee thinks that that's not really important. It's a local decision. We can remove that question.
I like the question. I was just reading through it. I had to read through it a couple times to understand. Maybe I'm just a little slow today. Maybe just adding the word in there, are maintenance costs paid on these 911 systems using local funds when grant funds are insufficient? I had to read through it a couple times to kind of grasp what you were asking me there, but I understand it now.
Yep, and we'll make that wording change.
This Sheriff Hyde, I think it is a good question. It's important to know what localities are able to do that and have done that in the past. So I think it's important.
Okay.
Does the committee feel that we need to break it out for each of the systems, or do we just need to condense it into a single question, say, and tag and somehow combine it into what we've talked about with grant preference, based on the systems identified above or something like that, and then ask the question? Or do we need to specifically ask it for each of the systems?
My opinion on that is that you probably need to break it into the systems because the answer may be different.
Okay.
Some people might be willing to accept more risk on a recorder than on their call handling equipment.
Okay.
But that's my opinion. What's others' thoughts? So does the majority think we should combine them, or do you agree that it could be a different answer from component to component?
Yeah, this is JR, Jolene. I think the question, breaking it out like you have it there is appropriate. I think when you look down through those systems, being a PSAP manager myself, when I see those titles there, call handling, mapping, CAD, I kind of prioritize those mentally of which is most important to my PSAP. They're all important, don't get me wrong, but if I was to be pinched for some funds, would I be willing to go 2 years with no maintenance on my recorder compared to 2 years with no maintenance on my call handling equipment? My answer to that would be, no, I would not be willing to go 2 years with no maintenance on my call handling equipment. I would have to do something to adjust some funding to make sure I had that covered. But so yeah, I like the way you have that question displayed just like it is there.
Okay. So Dorothy, moving on, does this encompass the survey section for this part of the critical questions, or is there more?
There's more, because the next section, we've got grant funding priorities, so that would be the last section on the grant-related questions, and then we move into consolidation questions.
Okay, good.
So I'll move down to the grant funding priorities. And then with this section, this is the desire is for the individual completing the survey to simply rank based on the 6 options here and adding any other items that they think should be in there to address other funding needs, and then to prioritize them, with 1 being the highest.
Yeah, it's JR. I think that's a good question, and I don't recommend any changes there that I can see.
And this Sheriff Hyde, I think the same. I think that gives them the way to prioritize it, and it's good for us to know that.
Okay. So that wraps up that, and we're going to do a little bit of work at the top of it, but otherwise I think that this is the questions around the grant priorities. Any other questions you all would like to see added to the survey for that section? And if you think of something after the meeting, just shoot Dorothy or I an email, and we'll incorporate it for the next iteration of the survey. Next critical question was around consolidations. So here I started off by ECATS was kind of the first initiative where it was a statewide managed procurement and decision. So just wanted to confirm with everyone in the state how satisfied they were, to confirm that has indeed been a successful endeavor. And then following that, it's asking their opinion if we could get a significant cost savings with other statewide initiatives, would they be willing to participate? And then we've listed specific major systems in the 911 center. And here again, would you be willing to, if the state managed the whole ESInet, let them make the decision or not? So just to kind of get a sense of, are there things that localities would be willing to give up some of the decision-making process? I mean, they would still participate, but it would no longer be solely a local decision if it was a significant cost savings for the state. And I know JR and I are doing, geodiverse systems. I know, we've got some hosted solutions. If we could get a much reduced cost doing that more at a state level, who would be willing to do it? And that can be, I expect this will be a very mixed and interesting responses, with the larger centers being less likely to want to give up that local control, and some of the smaller centers willing to look at some of the loss of decision making if it is a significant cost savings. So,
hey, Jolena, this is Jay.
Go ahead. I'm
sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah, I think that's a great question, and yeah, I'll be interested to see what the answers there are as well. I think as we're moving into next generation and the deployment of this ESInet and the potential of doing some potential projects like that in the future, I think it would definitely be some cost savings there, especially on some of the higher end components like your call handling equipment, which I'm diving into right now, trying to do some research on a potential regional project. And I would hope that a statewide hosted type solution would definitely be a cost savings to the localities, especially some of the smaller localities more rural localities that are trying to do some research on hosted and shared projects, and were surprised with the cost of the connectivity. So yes, I think it's a very good question, important question.
Okay.
And I agree. I think it is too.
Okay. Then then we had just two additional questions, and I think the third one will actually move up into the other section. But if you have considered consolidating with another 911 center, what was the obstacle to success? So that we know if we do start undertaking more equipment sharing and even possibly consolidations, what do the agencies need assistance with overcoming the obstacles? And then just asking, does anyone out there have other cost-saving ideas that we should be considering?
On the first question, can we maybe add in, or what do you think? It says if you've considered consolidating, but also add in, or what obstacles would you have if you had to think about it? There may be other people who haven't considered it, but would have ideas. Well, if it were to come up, this would be some obstacles I would see.
Yes, I think we can reword that.
If you've considered it, or if it was brought up, something so that even if you haven't considered it, that you may have some ideas of what would be a problem.
Yes, I think we can definitely. We will reword that to incorporate that thought.
And would you maybe want to also put in there, but also what would you see as some advantages that would help your agency out? So you could see what obstacles and advantages that each one would think of?
Yes. We can definitely add that in as well.
Okay.
And then, Jolena, the last question, do you have other suggestions for distributing funds? I'm assuming you want that moved up to the section in the survey that talks about the distribution of funds.
Yes, correct. So, Dorothy, I guess we need to talk a little bit about next steps for completing the survey and then getting it distributed. Of course, you and I can make the changes we've discussed today. Does the committee want to review it again? What, in your opinion, Dorothy, what should be our next steps?
Well, what I'd like to do is work with you to get a revised draft done, say, no later than Monday. And I can take a pass at maybe providing some instructions so it's clearer. I mean, it's not ready to be distributed, but providing some instruction so when it goes to the RAC, it's clear in terms of what our objectives are with each section. So if we can have, say, the next revision ready to go by Monday, I'd like to get it out to the RAC. We will not have a call on the 30th, but we should be able to have our call on the 7th. And that would give them a week to look at it and provide feedback to the group. And I've put together some tentative meeting dates for this committee, and we can talk about that in just a few moments after you're satisfied with next steps.
Okay. So, I mean, I think if none of the other committees have a concern with that, I think Dorothy will make a revision. We'll send it to the RAC, let them review it, make suggestions, and then we can review it at our next call and hopefully finalize it or get it close to finalizing for distribution. Is everyone comfortable with that as next step?
Sounds like a good plan.
And in the meantime, if you have other questions that you think of that you think we should incorporate, then just shoot those to Dorothy before Monday.
Okay.
Okay, Dorothy?
Okay, I'm going to move back to the PowerPoint presentation and move down to the meeting schedule. So what I was proposing in terms of our next meeting dates or our May meeting dates is for us to get together at the same time that we did today, but on May the 6th and May the 23rd. Now, the reason that I'm pushing our next meeting up to a Monday rather than a Thursday is because of the Virginia NENA conference. Now, this may mean that you're not going to be able to have as robust a discussion on the survey as you could have if we delayed that meeting until later in the week, because the RAC would not be getting together until the 7th. But I think that we'll have enough of other items to talk about in terms of the report on communication sales and use tax study, and then also another analysis that we're working on. So I think we'll still have plenty to talk about on the 6th, even if we don't have all of the feedback from the RAC at that time.
So from my standpoint, I'm good with both of those days. Because
we still have staff still has two items to get back to the committee. One is the comparative analysis that we're doing on the pre and post July 1st, 2018 funding formula amounts, and then the current estimates for legacy and NG9-1-1 recurring costs. And those costs are going to be based on the AT&T solution, and we're going to do that on a PSAP basis. So that I think will take us some time for everybody, one, to review it, and two, for us to discuss it. So we'll definitely have that. And then, as I said, we're going to talk about the report on the study.
Right. And so I'm good with both of those dates.
Okay. I'll go ahead and I'll send out calendar invites so we have those on everyone's calendar. And then moving on, this is the point in the call that we will ask anyone else or others participating on the call that are not committee members. If you have any comments that you want to make to the group, now's the time to jump in. Well, Jolena, we're right at 11:59, so we've used our full hour.
Well, thank you, Dorothy, for all of your work on this, and I appreciate everyone who joined the call today.
This Sheriff, I was just going to tell you, I'm good on the 6th. I just may have a problem with the next one down because I'll be at a HIDA meeting in Kentucky, but I will try what I can there.
Okay, and Sheriff, what we can do is on the 6th, we'll relook at the date for the 23rd to ensure that the majority can attend then.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.